drawing more fans from all over the world. Local consumer prices continue to hover at the 2% success rate in April.
Turning to robots to allow the visually impaired the chance to better indulge in cultural experiences, like the number of hybrid cars are registered in South Korea has surpassed 2 million using its locally developed Yuri rocket.
Arirang.
Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Oil prices saw another spike, with Brent crude surpassing $110 per barrel, following an Israeli attack on Iran's key South Pars natural gas field, and retaliation from Iran, a strike on major energy infrastructure in Qatar. U.S. President Donald Trump has suggested the idea of shifting responsibility for securing the Strait of Hormuz to countries that depend on the waterway, saying if the U.S. were to finish off what's left of Iran, it would put what he called non-responsive allies in gear. The U.S. Federal Reserve has kept interest rates steady for a second straight meeting, noting uncertainty from the Middle East conflict. This comes as policymakers still expect to make one rate cut this year, as they face a difficult balancing act between renewed inflationary pressures and a weakening labor market. As the conflict in the Middle East continues, attacks on energy infrastructure led global oil prices to spike overnight. Experts say this may worsen if disruptions persist. Our An Sung-jin starts us off.
Global oil prices surged sharply after military exchanges between Israel and Iran targeted key energy infrastructures across the Middle East. May deliver Brent crude futures, a global benchmark, jumped above $111 at 4:48 p.m. Eastern Time. With high volatility, Brent's return to the $110 range was the first time in 9 days. April delivery West Texas Intermediate futures climbed to $100 a barrel. This comes as Iranian state media reported that Israel struck gas processing infrastructure for the South Pars field, which accounts for more than 70% of Iran's natural gas production. The strike marks the first time Israel has directly targeted Iran's energy production infrastructure, having previously limited attacks to fuel storage sites. U.S. officials said Washington had been informed of the plan in advance, but was not involved in the operation. In retaliation, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps gave a list of imminent attacks on energy facilities in Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar, urging evacuations. It then launched a missile strike on a major gas-producing area in Qatar, which accounts for roughly 20% of global LNG supply. Saudi Arabia's defense ministry also said that it had intercepted and destroyed 4 ballistic missiles launched toward Riyadh. Experts warned that the conflict could further disrupt global energy flows, particularly as the Strait of Hormuz faces effective closure. Roughly 20% of the world's seaborne oil supply passes through the strait. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
And amid concerns over surging energy prices, the UAE has reportedly placed South Korea at the top of its priority list for crude oil. Now, that's according to Presidential Chief of Staff Kang Won-sik, following a recent trip to the Gulf nation. Our Eun-jit reports.
South Korea has secured an additional 18 million barrels of crude oil from the United Arab Emirates amid growing concerns over global energy markets due to the ongoing Middle East crisis. Presidential Chief of Staff Kang Won-sik made the announcement on Wednesday during a press briefing upon returning from his trip to the UAE. Kang said that the UAE promised South Korea as their #1 priority and that the worst-case scenario of an oil supply crisis has been avoided where crude oil supplies are cut off.
Amid a global emergency regarding crude oil supply and demand, the UAE has pledged to prioritize the supply of crude oil to South Korea above all others. No nation shall receive oil supplies ahead of Korea. Korea remains the foremost priority in the oil supply chain. Explicitly, the UAE clearly committed to this partnership, as South Korea is its #1 priority.
6 million barrels of the 18 will be carried by UAE-flagged tankers and 12 million barrels by South Korean vessels. This means, including an earlier agreement of 6 million barrels, South Korea is set to receive a total of 24 million barrels of crude oil from the UAE. Kang also noted that under emergency arrangements between the two countries, South Korea will be able to make emergency purchases of crude oil from the UAE at any time. The two countries have also agreed to sign a memorandum of understanding on cooperation in the supply chain of crude oil, including efforts to explore alternative supply routes. The MOU is expected to be signed in the near future. Kang added that he delivered a letter of appreciation from President Lee Jae-myung to President Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan for the Emirati leader's full support in ensuring the swift and safe return of South Korean nationals, and asked that continued attention be given to the safety of those still residing in the UAE. Some 3,000 of approximately 3,500 short-term residents in the UAE have returned home safely. 이은진, Arirang News.
U.S. President Donald Trump has suggested that countries heavily dependent on energy shipments through the Strait of Hormuz take responsibility for securing the waterway once the current crisis is over. In a post on social media platform Truth Social, Trump questioned what would happen if the U.S. stepped back after finishing off the threat from what he calls the Iranian terror state, arguing that nations relying on the strait would be forced to act. Trump's remarks hint at increased pressure on allies who have resisted U.S. calls to deploy naval forces to protect shipping in the strait. Though the Strait of Hormuz is a critical route for global oil shipments, the United States has a relatively low dependence on Middle Eastern oil imports, whereas Asian and European economies, including South Korea and Japan, are much more reliant on oil from the region. The U.S. Federal Reserve has kept interest rates unchanged for a second straight meeting, citing elevated uncertainty from the ongoing Middle East conflict. Policymakers still project one rate cut this year, despite rising oil prices and weaker job data clouding the economic outlook. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
The U.S. Federal Reserve has held its benchmark interest rate steady for a second straight meeting, maintaining its projection of one rate cut this year as uncertainty grows over the economic fallout from the ongoing U.S.-Israeli war against Iran. At its two-day Federal Open Market Committee meeting on Wednesday, the central bank decided to keep the federal funds rate unchanged in the 3.5 to 3.75% range.
Today, the FOMC decided to leave our policy rate unchanged. We see the current stance of monetary policy as appropriate to promote progress toward our maximum employment and 2% inflation goals.
The move leaves the interest rate gap between South Korea and the United States at up to 1.25 percentage points. The decision also comes as policymakers face a difficult balancing act. Rising global oil prices are fueling concerns about renewed inflationary pressure, while a weaker U.S. labor market adds to worries about slowing growth. The latest employment report showed the economy lost 92,000 jobs last month. Despite the uncertainty, the Fed's updated median forecast still points to the federal funds rate being lowered to around 3.4% by the end of the year, signaling the possibility of a single quarter percentage point cut in 2026, unchanged from its December outlook. In its statement, the central bank warned that uncertainty about the economic outlook remains elevated, particularly due to developments in the Middle East. Officials said the implications of the conflict for the U.S. economy are unclear, but stressed they are closely monitoring risks to both sides of the Fed's dual mandate of achieving maximum employment and stable inflation at around 2%. Fed Chair Jerome Powell also stressed that higher energy prices are likely to push overall inflation higher in the near term. However, he cautioned that it is still too early to determine how lasting or severe the impact will be. When asked whether the Fed expects the current oil shock to be temporary, Powell said no one can be certain. He noted the economic effects could turn out to be much smaller or significantly larger than anticipated, underscoring the high level of uncertainty facing policymakers. 이승재, Arirang News.
So the U.S. Federal Reserve has decided to keep its interest rates steady, noting uncertain impacts from the war in the Middle East. For more on this, we're joined today by Professor Kim Yong-jin at Seogang Business School. Professor Kim, thanks for coming on today.
Good morning.
So how have the Middle East crisis and the surge in oil prices affected the central bank's decision?
Yeah, the Federal Reserve decision to keep interest rate steady at 3.5 to 3.75 was heavily influenced by a tug of war between rising energy cost and softening job market. The Middle East crisis and the following surge in oil prices toward $100 per barrel, in addition to high tariff, act as a direct tax on consumers. The Fed is concerned that high energy costs will seep into the prices of other goods and services, stalling progress toward their 2% inflation target. Moreover, Fed officials look to fear if the oil price stays high, the business and consumers will start expecting long-term inflation, leading to a wage price spiral that is much harder to break. Basically, the Fed chose to hold rates steady rather than cut them. They wanted to ensure that oil spike, doesn't trigger a broader inflationary wave, especially when the Middle East conflict is creating extreme uncertainty. The Fed, typically avoid, making a drastic policy shift like cutting rate when geopolitical shock could suddenly escalate or de-escalate.
Right, and the Fed is still expecting to cut rates once this year, despite spiking oil prices. And it also released a summary of economic projections, which showed higher inflation projections for the year. What do you make of the latest projections?
Yeah, the Fed decision to keep one rate cut on the table while simultaneously raising inflation forecast looked like a contradiction. But it reveals that the Fed is trying to perform a highly balancing act. The SEP and the summary of economic projections indicate that even though the median dots still point to one cut, the distribution of the dots shifted significantly. In previous report, many officials saw 2 or 3 cuts. Now almost everyone has moved into 1 cut or 0 cut camp. By keeping 1 cut in the forecast, the Fed essentially saying that we aren't giving up on easing yet, but we are pushing the start date as far back as possible, like in September or December. It is noted in the SEP is that the Fed accepted higher inflation for now by raising the core PCE inflation forecast to 2.7% up from 2.5%. It shows the Fed acknowledges that the Middle East crisis and oil spike aren't just temporary blips. They are sticky pressures. The question is why did the Fed still primes a cut if inflation is rising? The Fed saw the 92,000 job losses in February. They are worried that if they stay at 3.5 to 3.75% for long, the economy won't just slow down, it will crash. So I believe that 1 cut isn't meant to stimulate the economy, but it's meant to move the rate slightly closer to the neutral so they don't accidentally trigger a deep recession.
Right, and South Korea will also decide on its own rates next month. That's on April 10th. How might the Fed's move affect the Bank of Korea's decision?
Well, that's tough, right? I believe that the Fed decision to keep the rate, unchanged significantly narrows the Bank of Korea's, maneuverability for its own April 10 meeting. The BOK now faces a triple high crisis: high oil prices, a high exchange rate, and a high interest rate that likely mandate a continued rate hold at 2.5%, with the Fed holding at 3.5, 3.75%, and the BOK at 2.5%. the 1% to 1.25 percentage point gap persists. A cut rate by BOK now would widen this spread further, risking massive foreign capital outflows when Korean won has recently approached the psychologically critical 1,500 won per dollar level. Any BOK easing would, put further downward pressure on the won, or making import, including energy, even more expensive. South Korea relies on the Middle East for 7% of its oil, cutting rate, while energy-driven inflation is accelerating, could cause headline inflation to rebound sharply above the 2% target. In sum, Fed hawkish pose effectively locked the BOK into a pause, as well as Korea cannot afford a weaker currency while fighting an energy shock.
Right, like you just mentioned, the Korean won moved past the 1,500 Korean won level against the US dollar this week, and this marked the first time it's broken that level in daytime trading in 17 years. So has the 1,500 won exchange rate become the new normal now?
Well, I don't think so. But although, the 1,501 mark, has been breached in daytime trading for the first time since the 2009 global financial crisis, I view it as a temporary spike driven by extreme geopolitical stress rather than a new normal for a stable economy. The primary trigger are the effectively closed Strait of Hormuz and global oil prices surging past $100 per barrel, right? And most analysts suggest, 1,501 level is not yet entrenched, but it could become so under specific conditions. Let's say if oil prices stays above $100, and the conflict becomes a protracted war, the 1,501 per dollar could become a more permanent feature of the 2026 economy. If this level were to persist, it would likely lead to sharp rises in gasoline and raw material cost, weakening domestic consumption, and potentially causing, South Korea to miss its 2% growth target for the year.
Right, and before I let you go, more broadly, the Iran war has already, heavily impacted the global economy, like we just discussed, driving up oil prices, and this led to a spike in the cost of living and airline fares. So could the conflict trigger a global recession?
Well, the Iran conflict, has already posed a serious and growing threat to the global economy. A prolonged war, which causes a sustained disruption to critical energy and trade routes, could trigger a global recession if oil prices stays over $100 or climbs toward 140 to 150. It would likely push more major economies into recession. The effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz, by Iran, has already forced the ships to take longer, more expensive route around the Cape of Good Hope, and doubling, some shipping cost. Moreover, considering the fact that the Middle East is a major producer of fertilizers and critical materials like helium, which is essential for semiconductors, disruptions in this area could lead to long-term increases in global food prices and high-tech manufacturing cost. So the war that lasts beyond 3 months significantly increases the possibility of a guaranteed global recession.
I see. I guess we'll have to see how that goes. All right, Professor Kim, thank you so much for your time and insight today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
A new U.S. intelligence assessment says North Korea has strengthened its military capabilities through support provided to Russia in the war against Ukraine. The findings come from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence Annual Threat Assessment of the U.S. intelligence community released on Wednesday. The report says North Korean forces have gained valuable modern combat experience and equipment, though the long-term impact will depend on how effectively Pyongyang institutionalizes those lessons. Despite the gains, the assessment notes that North Korea is still likely to remain deterred by the United States and its allies. It also warns that Pyongyang continues to expand its strategic weapons programs, including missiles and nuclear warheads, and highlights its increasingly sophisticated cyber operations as a growing security threat. With more than 200,000 people expected to gather at Gwanghwamun Square for BTS comeback concert this Saturday, preparations are in full swing. Telecom companies in particular are working to ensure seamless connectivity for the massive crowd. Our Park Junan has more.
Cell site technicians are deploying a temporary mobile cell site. The vehicle, designed to enhance internet connectivity and support spikes in network traffic, is being set up in preparation for BTS comeback concert on Saturday. Unlike other large gatherings with relatively low or non-essential internet use, this concert is expected to generate exceptionally high data use in a concentrated area. In particular, data traffic is likely to surge in and around the stage due to a spike in photo and video uploads, while data use may also rise outside as people watch live streams.
We saw reports that many foreign tourists would be attending, so we also analyzed roaming usage rates. We've modeled scenarios for up to 260,000 visitors and then designed the network accordingly, so we're confident people will be able to use telecom services without disruption.
On top of that, the three major mobile carriers said they will actively implement AI systems when providing network services to better distribute traffic. An expert said Korea's telecommunications service is already world-class, capable of handling concentrated traffic.
I think Korea's telecommunications technology, especially on the operational side, is among the best in the world. So the amount of bandwidth available per person is already quite high. And in terms of handling dense traffic, I believe we are far more capable than many other countries.
While BTS takes the spotlight, these unsung heroes keep the connection seamless so fans can fully enjoy the moment. The concert at Gwanghwamun Square is also a real-world testbed for Korea's telecom capabilities. Don't worry, BTS fans. Whether you're among the 22,000 concertgoers or watching from outside the venue, telecom companies have your fast on-site internet connection covered. Park Junan, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. The top U.S. intelligence official says that Iran's government remains intact but significantly weakened. During a Senate Intelligence Committee hearing in Washington on Wednesday, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard stated that U.S. strikes last year obliterated Iran's nuclear program with no signs of reconstruction. However, Gabbard repeatedly declined to disclose whether the intelligence community warned President Trump about the possible fallout of the current war, including the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. The testimony follows the resignation of counterterrorism chief Joe Kent, who argued that Iran posed no imminent threat. Gabbard said that defining an imminent threat remains the president's sole responsibility. U.S. civil rights activist Dolores Huerta on Wednesday accused her United Farm Workers of America co-founder Cesar Chavez of sexually abusing her and others decades ago. The 95-year-old activist said in a formal statement that she had remained silent for 60 years to protect the farm worker movement, but could no longer hide the truth. The allegations, which include claims of forced encounters and secret pregnancies, coincided with a New York Times investigation into Chavez's treatment of young women. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has moved to abolish the state's Cesar Chavez Day holiday, while Arizona and New Mexico leaders called for the removal of his name from public landmarks. Chavez died in 1993. The Senegalese government is calling for an independent international investigation into suspected corruption with African football's governing body. The demand follows a ruling by the Confederation of African Football, or CAF, on Tuesday, which stripped Senegal of its 2025 Africa Cup of Nations title and awarded it to Morocco. Although Senegal won the January final 1-0 on the pitch, CAF overturned the result, ruling it a forfeiture because Senegalese players staged a 17-minute walk-off to protest a stoppage time penalty. The Senegalese Football Federation on Wednesday filed an appeal with the Court of Arbitration for Sport, labeling the decision a, quote, grossly illegal breach of trust. U.S. President Donald Trump has sparked international debate after suggesting statehood for Venezuela following their World Baseball Classic semifinal victory. After Venezuela defeated Italy 4-2 in Miami on Monday to advance to the final against Team USA, Trump posted on Truth Social questioning if statehood number 51 was the, quote, magic behind the country's recent changes. The comment follows dramatic shifts in U.S. relations with Venezuela, which included a military operation that captured Nicolas Maduro and the reopening of the U.S. Embassy in Caracas.
We are in for another day of big temperature swings, especially across inland areas. It was a colder start compared to yesterday, but temperatures will climb quickly this afternoon, rising by 10 to 15 degrees Celsius in many places. And it gets even milder from here. It's going to be slightly breezier than normal today, but starting tomorrow, highs will be running above seasonal averages. And this afternoon, daily highs will be 1 to 5 degrees Celsius higher than yesterday. So we're getting up to 11 degrees. Daegu will be much warmer at 16 degrees under sunny skies nationwide. Also good news on the air quality front. Air quality has returned to normal. Then we are expecting mostly clear skies to stick around for the time being, and we should notice morning temperatures gradually rising as well. Just keep in mind those big day to night temperature gaps will stick around, so it's worth dressing in layers.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.
서양 요리는 오직 하나의 주인공을 위한 무대입니다. 완벽하게 계산된 정무라 같죠. 그런데 한식은 밥과 찬이 어우러져 완성되는 한상이 더 중요해요. 마치 자연을 한 폭에 담은 풍경을 같달까요?
요리사인 저도 한국 음식에 대해서 제대로 모르는 거예요.
향이 미쳤다. 어쩌도 맛보고 싶어요. 알면 알수록 과학적이고 이렇게 하면 할수록 제가 더 빠져드는다.
온다. 엄청 왔다.
같이 여행을 한번 떠나보시죠.
저는 만 5살에 바이올린을 시작했는데요. 바이올린 소리를 워낙 좋아했어서 그 특유의 따뜻함과 약간 사람의 목소리 같은 목소리를 갖고 있거든요, 바이올린이. 저는 무대에 올랐을 때보다는 이제 혼자 연습할 때 더 큰 희열을 느끼는데, 제가 표현하고자 하는 음악이 잘 나왔을 때 그때 가장 큰 기쁨을 느끼는 것 같아요. 그래서 저만의 색깔을 어떻게 하면 찾아갈 수 있을까, 그걸 제일 많이 고민하는 것 같아요. 연습을 할 때는 이제 생각과 고민을 많이 하는 반면에 무대에서 연주할 때는 정말 머릿속을 비우고 아무 생각도 안 하려고 하는 것 같아요. 무대에서는 자유롭게 콩쿨 무대도 저만의 독주라고 생각하는 자세를 가지려고 하고 있어요. 사실 바이올린과는 거의 제 인생의 대부분을 같이 해왔기 때문에 저를 힘들게 할 때도 많지만 제가 가장 사랑하고 아끼는 존재입니다. 작곡가가 전달하고 싶은 메시지와 또 제 자신이 관객들에게 전달하고 싶은 메시지를 모두 다 설득력 있게 잘 전달할 수 있는 그런 연주자가 되고 싶습니다.
held its first debate over the weekend.
The economy is expected to expand 2.5% this year.
Boosting Korea's ties with its global partners on the sidelines of the statehood summit.
A massive drone attack on Ukraine overnight on Monday and Tuesday.
Arirang.
We're here to bring a new type of news show. New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Thursday, March 19th here in Seoul. I'm Lee Soo-jin, and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Chuyeon.
Hello,
hello. And also Moon News with us.
Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday. And both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So as we head toward the end of the work week, let's take a look at a trend that's been taking over social media feeds. So food trends seem to come and go at lightning speed here in Korea these days, but one ingredient in particular has been grabbing a lot of attention lately. So since the popularity of Dubai-style chewy chocolates, a new wave of food has been going viral online. So what is this spring food trend that's been taking over social media, Chuyeon?
So one spring food that is gaining attention on social media is 봄동. If you visit Korean supermarkets, it's all over there. So 봄동 means spring in Korean, and it refers to a seasonal cabbage that grows in Korea in early spring. And like regular cabbage, its leaves spread outward and have a naturally sweet and crisp texture. Because of this fresh flavor, it has recently become very popular in dishes such as 봄동 bibimbap, as you can see. Many people enjoy it mixed with rice, vegetables, and a light seasoning of sesame oil, gochujang, a Korean chili paste. And the thing that you're seeing is the one that I made, actually.
Ooh.
Yes, and personally, I do enjoy 봄동 나물 무침, as you can see, a simple seasoned spring cabbage salad. It's lightly mixed with soy sauce, sesame oil, garlic, and sesame seeds, and even children enjoy its mild texture and sweet taste as well. With its refreshing taste and seasonal appeal, Pomdong has quickly become a favorite spring ingredient on social media. So spring on your plate now.
I like what you said, the spring on your plate. I actually had pomdong bibimbap yesterday.
Wow.
And it was a great experience. I actually like having meat usually in pretty much everything I eat, but it just feels really fresh.
It is.
And I think what you said was perfect. Spring on a plate.
Lovely.
And you feel healthy even after you eat
Indeed.
it. So I actually really enjoyed it, to my surprise. So what about you?
Yeah, just tracing back where this trend has came from. A 2008 clip of Korean entertainer Kang Ho-dong eating this pomdong bibimbap on a variety show kind of has resurfaced, making this the hottest food trend in South Korea these days. Related dishes like pomdong 겉절이 or 된장찌개 are also riding the wave of popularity. Personally, I'm a vegetable hater, so I haven't tried pomdong bibimbap yet. But after hearing Juyeon's description and the lovely photo that she provided us, I think I have to try it once someday in a very close future. Also, whenever I eat bibimbap, I always put lots of gochujang in order to, not taste the vegetables. But this time, I will lessen the gochujang and I will actually taste the pomdong.
So that's so relatable. A lot of people tend to load up on the gochujang with bibimbap, and also they like to have meat in their bibimbap, like me, and but all this actually ends up masking the actual flavors. But spring dishes like this, such as pomdong, are really about letting those fresh, seasonal ingredients shine. So it's the perfect time to try something a little different. So we're going to talk more about this, but first, let's take a look at the screen. With trends in Korea coming and going at lightning speed, it can be hard to keep up. One reason they feel so short-lived is that many are tied to the seasons. A growing trend known as seasonal core in Korea encourages people to fully enjoy and document things that can only be experienced at a particular time of year, from seasonal foods to fashion and lifestyle activities. Today on News Generation, we take a closer look at some of the items gaining popularity this spring, from vegetables and seafood that are currently in season to other experiences people in Korea look forward to enjoying during the spring months. As we just saw in a video, seasonal trends are shaping the way people eat and spend. And one concept that's gaining attention among younger consumers is something called seasonal core here in Korea. So what exactly is a seasonal core trend that's taking off among consumers in Korea?
Well, good question. It means that you do eat something in that specific season. So seasonal core, again, it refers to a trend where people actively enjoy and share things that can only be experienced in a specific season. This includes seasonal foods, as we talked about it before, and fashion and lifestyle activities. For example, people do enjoy dishes made with seasonal ingredients such as spring vegetables or summer fruits. And when it comes to fashion, they might wear outfits that reflect the mood of the season, like light cotton in summer or warm layers in winter. And also lifestyle activities also change with the season, such as going to see autumn leaves or enjoying spring picnics. In other words, it's about fully embracing what each season uniquely offers. So many Gen Z users share these lovely moments on social media. But the thing is, as climate change makes the seasons feel less clear, people want to appreciate the feeling of the season while it lasts for a couple of weeks. For Gen Z, enjoying seasonal flavors and experiences has become a new form of meaningful consumption now. So after all, if it's in season, why not enjoy it to the fullest?
I agree, and that's really interesting. So it's not just about food, but about enjoying and documenting the feeling of the season itself. And this mindset is also influencing what people choose to eat at different times of the year. So how are people then incorporating this seasonal core trend into their diets or their meals, Moonju?
Yeah, so driven by a now or never mindset, people are actively hunting down seasonal fruits and seasonal seafoods, vegetables, capturing and sharing these culinary moments on their social media. Just a month ago, during the freezing winter, oysters and fatty fish like yellowtail were the seasonal flavors. People also enjoyed apples, which are typical winter fruits. And I actually remember myself having a yellowtail twice in a row at the exactly same place. And also, during the winter, we also have our classic go-to foods like 붕어빵 or roasted sweet potatoes, especially the ones that we could find in food trucks. But now, spring greens are officially taking over this trend in South Korea.
Right, so the idea is really about enjoying ingredients at their peak while they last. And with spring now here, that naturally brings attention to seasonal vegetables that are just starting to appear. So we talked about spring cabbages, but what other spring vegetables are currently in season?
Well, Minji, you just made us very hungry right now. Yes. So as you mentioned earlier, yes. So the idea is about doing and eating the thing at their peak. With spring here, seasonal vegetables are starting to appear. So besides spring cabbages, a variety of spring greens are also in season. One popular example is 냉이, also known as shepherd's purse. Interesting. It looks like the little purse once carried by shepherds back in the days. 냉이 is a wild spring herb, often seasoned simply with soy sauce, chili flakes, sesame oil, and garlic, or added to 된장찌개, which is a Korean soybean paste stew, in order to enhance its flavor. And another seasonal favorite is mina리, or Korean water parsley. Recently, as Korean ingredients become more widely known, it is also often referred to simply as mina리. It's often enjoyed with 삼겹살, grilled pork belly, where the fresh herb adds a bright and refreshing taste with mina리. So the key is not to cook it too much, just let the leftover heat soften it a little bit so it stays crisp and fresh. When that happens, it almost feels like you are tasting spring in every bite. So it's a simple way to taste spring.
And looking at the clips and also the list that you just talked about, it seems like they're all really healthy foods as well, so you can enjoy it without feeling guilty. So, and it sounds both healthy and flavorful. Those strong spring aromas are something people really look forward to after winter. And of course, there are other seasonal ingredients that make their way into popular spring dishes. So what other spring ingredients or dishes should people try this spring?
Oh yeah, spring is also the peak season for 쪽파 or scallions, right? Because they are grown outdoors during this time of the year and they are packed with nutrients. A true spring delicacy is 쪽파전, a savory pancake made by mixing these fresh scallions into a simple batter of flour, eggs, and water, as you can see from our screen right now, and pan frying it in oil to perfection, okay? And we certainly can't leave out 열무, young radish. In Korea, families typically make their batches of winter kimchi and in late autumn, which means during this time of the year, they are kind of running out of the kimchi, and thus to fill this gap, people make fresh kimchi using these young radishes. In fact, a bowl of 열무 kimchi bibimbap is every bit as delicious as this trending 봄동 bibimbap, as you can see from our screen here.
So those dishes really captured the taste of spring in Korea. Simple ingredients, but very seasonal and comforting. And to gain a more in-depth perspective, we're going to speak with someone who makes content based on Korean food. And that conversation will take place right after the break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out channel Arirang News. Click Posts and cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
Joining us today is Matthew from Poland, who shares a wide range of Korean dishes and recipes with his audience online. So hello, Matthew. Thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Oh, hello. I'm very thankful for inviting me for the show. Hello, everyone. I'm Matthew from Poland. I live in South Korea and I love Korean food.
We're also very glad to have you on since you were one of the people that made this trend go viral. So what do you think of the spring cabbage or 봄동 bibimbap trend, and what's your own recipe for it?
Actually, I very enjoyed that trend because like the trend in Korea, it's very fast. It changes like every week, every month. But they all enjoy like some sweets or stuff. But this time, it's like 봄동 is like, it feels like spring. And it's actually good for your body, good for your digestion. It's very like, it nourishes your body. But it's just spring cabbage. So when the season starts, like you can make a bibimbap. It's like not very seasoned. It's like slightly seasoned, just with like season like the sesame oil, or you can use doenjang, gochujang for that. Not many hard seasoning for that, and then you just mix it with rice. You can add some meat in that, or you can just eat it with like a fried egg. And I think it's very nice. It's a very balanced dish, and it's just still highlighting the freshness of the cabbage.
I see. So we do know that you have uploaded so many Korean dishes in your social media. Then which Korean spring ingredient is your favorite, and how do you use it, Matthew?
I think when the spring starts here, my number one, I think, is bomtong, and the second one would be, I think, two of them. It's dalle, which is, how do you call this in English? I'm not sure, but it's kind of very fresh aroma, and it feels like the spring starts in here. So, but it's also, you just season lightly with soy sauce or with gochugaru, which is the Korean like the red pepper, like the crushed red pepper. And it's very nice for like the fried meat or fried vegetables, which you can enjoy in Korean barbecue, or you can just eat it easily with like kim, which is the pressed seaweed, and just mix it with rice.
Yeah, I see. So now that we've only talked about Korean ingredients right now, what do you think are some, Polish ingredient or spring ingredients specifically that you think Koreans might also like it?
When the spring starts in Poland, I always enjoyed the sandwiches for breakfast my mom always made, which was with the small radishes in the pink color, and also she topped that with like the fresh chives, which has very fresh but a little bit spiciness in that. But also we have like spinach, which is sign of spring in Poland too. And I think like people in Korea, they would very enjoy that, because you can just make it like the chive you can use for the topping for pancakes or for kind of like the bibimbap dishes. But the spinach, which is shigumchi, you can just easily make it with like some soy sauce or doenjang, which is soybean paste, the fermented soybean paste, and make it like a Korean style kind of namul. Yeah, like the Korean traditional salad, which is a side dish also for the all kind of food.
I'm really glad you pointed out all the different spring ingredients and vegetables that are available, because I also, as someone who has tried pomdong recently, I really feel like what's great about spring vegetables and food is that it feels really healthy, but it's not exactly bland, so you can also have a good time eating it while feeling healthy as well. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing insights with us today.
Thank you so much.
So we just heard from a Korean food influencer from Poland who shared his take on spring cabbage bibimbap, the most memorable spring dish he's tried, and even recommended some Polish seasonal ingredients Koreans may not be familiar with. So seasonality doesn't stop at vegetables. It plays a huge role in seafood as well. So which seafood isn't seasoned in Korea right now, Jin?
Well, there are so many must-eat seafood in Korea, but when it comes to spring, Jukumi, or wedfoot octopus, or known as baby octopus, is one of the seafoods that is especially popular in spring in Korea. It is a seasonal favorite. It is often stir-fried with spicy sauce, but in spring, many people prefer lighter dishes like jukumi shabu-shabu, which is a hot pot where thin slices of octopus are briefly cooked in broth to enjoy its natural flavor that is. It tastes especially good with minari, Korean water parsley. And spring jukumi is particularly delicious because the head is full of raw, fresh, the fish eggs I'm talking about, and it gives a rich and nutty flavor. Along Korea's west coast, many people do enjoy boat trips where they can try jukumi fishing, which is sort of a popular spring activity. So a true taste of spring from the sea now.
Now I'm like truly excited for spring.
You are.
So this sounds like the perfect way to enjoy the natural flavors of spring seafood, and I personally love seafood, so let's keep talking about it for a bit more. So what other spring seafood is available this time?
Oh, wow. Okay, now I'm getting really hungry right now, but we are not done talking about the fish. So other seafoods, yeah. You know, when you think of spring sashimi, we have todari or flounder, which is undoubtedly the most famous one. It is often enjoyed sliced long and thin like noodles or boiled into a comforting soup called todari sukguk, featuring seasonal spring mugwort. Sea pineapple monge or sea squirts midadak also hit their peak season in the spring, and while they are incredibly delicious, simply dipped in chochang, which is sweet and spicy gochujang, spring is the perfect time to enjoy them as a hearty bibimbap, tossed with fresh vegetables like lettuce and chives and perfectly seasoned with chochang and a drizzle of sesame oil.
So all of these dishes really highlight how spring flavors come together in Korean cuisine. So beyond food, however, there are also plenty of seasonal experiences people can look forward to. So what experiences can people enjoy in Korea during springtime?
Good question. Well, spring in Korea is not just about food. We do some stuff. It's also about flowers, you know. If you travel to the southern regions now, you can already see beautiful mewa or plum blossoms and sansu, known as carnelian cherry blossoms. And also the Gwangyang Mehwa Festival and the Kure Sansu Festival are especially popular spring destinations in Korea. And in about 10 days, cherry blossom festivals will begin all across the nation, the country, turning cities and parks into pink or white landscapes. At many of these festivals, you can also enjoy seasonal spring foods, of course, which makes the experience even more delightful and special indeed. Even without a festival, visiting Korea's peaceful royal palaces or Buddhist temples here to see the flowers can be just as beautiful. So please just come to Korea in spring and you'll find something to see, something to eat, and something to enjoy everywhere.
So basically, delicious, healthy food and also fun activities that involve beautiful flowers. What more can you want?
That's a perfect fit.
So that really captures the essence of spring here in Korea, food and scenery combined. And for those looking for something a bit more hands-on, there are also unique activities as well. So what are some unique spring activities people can try in Korea, Moonju?
Oh, there are very unique activities that you could try. You know, a springtime activity is experiencing the tidal flats on the west coast. This is a very unique experience. Normally, harvesting seafood in Korean mudflats is strictly reserved for licensed individuals. However, during the spring, these areas temporarily open to the public, providing rentals for, you know, rubber boots and workwear, so anyone can experience clam digging firsthand, with programs, you know, widely available just outside of Seoul, such as in Ganghwa Island. It makes for a perfect weekend day trip, I think.
You probably would never usually catch me. You would never catch me like getting my feet dirty on purpose or my hands dirty, but then because it just happens in the spring, like you said.
Yeah.
I think I would be willing to go.
Yeah, I will. I mean, I'm not going to say I will, but I will try, yeah.
So as we've seen today, spring in Korea is all about enjoying ingredients at their freshest. From seasonal vegetables to seafood and even outdoor experiences, it's a time to fully embrace what the season has to offer. So whether it's through food or a simple day out, now might be the perfect time to savor a taste of spring. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation, but News Gen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time with more stories and discussions. Big thanks to Chi-hyun.
Have a lovely spring-like day.
You too, and also Moonju.
Thanks for having me today.
And to our viewers, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you take the time to enjoy the flavors and trends of this year's spring. We are News Generation.
Time to set the facts straight. Get Korea right. K-culture is sweeping the globe. K-pop, K-drama, K-movie, K-food, and even K-beauty. Korean cultural content is gaining more and more fans worldwide. It's indeed the golden age of K-culture. But with this growing interest comes an increase in misinformation about Korea. There's so much inaccurate information out there. Even AI can sometimes get it wrong. So, we must set things straight and correct all the misinformation. So here's the plan. The Voluntary Agency Network of Korea, VANK, and Arirang TV present the Get Korea Right project. Our goal is to provide accurate information on important keywords that come to mind when we think of Korea. Blatant errors and false claims that distort history. It's time to set the record straight, sharing the true history and culture of Korea while raising the national brand. Let's get started with Get Korea Right. Are you ready to join?